Captain Reeves left Hassan's corner store, carrying a feeling he had not experienced in years. Not fear. Something worse. Recognition. The moment the glass door closed behind him, the sounds of the neighborhood rushed back into place around him. Cars rolled through puddles left over from the previous night's rain. Somewhere down the block, a radio played softly through an apartment window. A delivery truck backed into an alley while its brakes squealed loudly enough to make a woman walking nearby cover one ear. Normal sounds. Normal life. But Reeves no longer felt connected to any of it. His mind remained trapped inside Hassan's surveillance room. Those monitors. Those officers. Joshua's photograph. The captain stood beside his car for nearly 30 seconds before unlocking it. His reflection stared back at him through the driver's side window. The deep lines around his eyes looked worse this morning. His shoulders sagged heavier than usual. Retirement had softened parts of him physically, but not mentally. Not really. Some cases never fully released a man. The Valentine Children Case was one of them. Reeves slid into the driver's seat and shut the door quietly behind him. He didn't start the car immediately. Instead, he sat there staring through the windshield while the neighborhood moved around him. The image of Officer Dunn carrying those babies out of that blood-covered house flashed through his mind again. Then the little boy. That silent little boy walking beside him. Reeves could still remember the child's face clearer than he wanted to. Not crying, not screaming, just staring. Like whatever he witnessed inside that house had reached into him and shut something off forever. Reeves rubbed his hand slowly against his face. "Damn it," he whispered. Because now another thought had started bothering him. What if those officers weren't searching for Joshua? What if they were searching for the child from the Valentine case? The idea settled into his stomach hard enough to make him sit upright. No. No, that didn't make sense. Nobody knew which child survived that house. Not publicly, not officially. The case files buried most of the identities after the children were placed into the system. Too much media attention. Too much political pressure. Too many mistakes made during the investigation. Still, something about Joshua kept pulling the old case toward him, and Reeves hated how quickly his instincts were beginning to wake back up. Finally, he started the engine and pulled away from the curb. The farther he drove, the quieter he became. At a red light, Reeves found himself staring absent-mindedly at a young father helping his daughter cross the street. The little girl held onto the man's hand while talking excitedly about something Reeves could not hear through the glass. The father laughed. The child laughed harder. Reeves looked away immediately, because suddenly he remembered the Valentine house again. Not the blood, not the investigation. The toys. That was the part nobody talked about. The toys still sitting on the floor while officers stepped around blood trying to secure the scene. Tiny shoes near the couch. A half-finished coloring book. A spilled box of crayons. Children had been living there. Really living there. Then overnight, that home became a crime scene. The light turned green. Reeves exhaled heavily through his nose. Then suddenly his eyes shifted toward the donut shop, sitting near the corner ahead. And that was when realization finally hit him. There was only one person left who might know why Joshua's picture was suddenly moving through neighborhoods again. One man Reeves promised himself he would never willingly sit across from again. No, Reeves muttered under his breath. But deep down, he already knew he was going. The captain jerked the wheel sharply and pulled into the donut shop parking lot. The owner was still unlocking the front door when she noticed his car. For a second, her face brightened. "Well, look who finally came back from the dead," she joked softly. "Hey, Captain Reeves." Reeves barely glanced toward her. He lifted one finger politely, asking for a minute, then walked toward the old payphone beside the building. The booth smelled like metal, cigarettes, and rainwater. He stepped inside slowly. For several seconds, he just stared at the receiver hanging there. His reflection looked back at him through scratched glass and chipped paint. Older. More tired. And far too close to the past again. Finally, Reeves picked up the phone and slid a dime into the slot. The clicking sound echoed loudly inside the booth. He dialed the number from memory. Every digit still lived inside his head after all these years. The line rang twice. Then someone answered. "I need a favor," Reeves said quietly. Silence. Reeves glanced through the booth window toward the street while lowering his voice even further. Yes, I need to speak with him. Another pause followed, long enough for Reeves's jaw to tighten. Then finally he nodded once. All right. He hung up the phone slowly. But he didn't leave the booth right away. Instead, he stood there staring outward while traffic drifted past the glass. A younger version of himself once believed certain doors should never be reopened. Today, he was about to reopen one anyway. Reeves stepped out of the booth and walked toward his car. He opened the glove compartment and grabbed his wallet before heading inside the donut shop. The smell hit him immediately. Fresh coffee, sugar, grease, warm dough. The scent wrapped around him almost like memory itself. The floor squeaked beneath his boots as he approached the counter. Nobody stood there yet. Somewhere in the back, trays clattered while old music played softly from a radio station filled with static. A small silver bell rested near the register. Reeves rang it once. A moment later, the owner emerged, wiping flour from her hands. How you been, Captain? Reeves kept his eyes toward the coffee machine. The usual. The woman froze instantly. Not because of the words. Because of what they meant. During Reeves's years on the force, he only ordered the usual when difficult cases started getting inside his head. The officers around the precinct used to joke about it. If Reeves ordered jelly donuts and black coffee, somebody was probably going to jail soon. The owner folded the towel carefully. What's wrong? Reeves stayed quiet. That alone told her enough. You only order the usual when you got a tough case, she said softly. And you retired years ago. Reeves finally looked up. His eyes looked exhausted. It's that case? The owner's expression changed immediately. The captain leaned tiredly against the counter. That case stepped back into my life, he admitted quietly. And now I gotta do something I swore I'd never do again. The woman lowered her voice. Does this got something to do with those strange men dressed like cops? Reeves straightened instantly. They came here too? The owner nodded slowly. They walked in yesterday morning carrying a picture. Didn't smile, didn't buy nothing, just kept questioning people. Joshua. The captain felt his stomach tighten again. They didn't feel right, the woman continued. Real officers don't usually make people nervous just by standing there. Reeves looked toward the window silently. That was exactly what Hassan said without actually saying it. Should I be worried? She asked quietly. For the first time since entering the shop, Reeves hesitated before answering. That hesitation frightened her more than words would have. The captain shook his head slowly, but under his breath he mumbled something she couldn't fully hear. This thing ain't buried like we thought. Minutes later, Reeves sat back inside his car with a paper bag of jelly donuts resting beside him and a large black coffee balanced in the cup holder. The freeway swallowed him quickly. Buildings disappeared. Neighborhoods disappeared. Soon the city itself started thinning out behind long stretches of industrial fencing, warehouses, and empty roads. Reeves drove faster than usual. Not reckless, just impatient. Every mile closer to the prison made his chest feel tighter. He reached into the bag again and grabbed another donut. Strawberry jelly spilled slightly onto his thumb when he bit into it, but he barely noticed. Powdered sugar dusted across his jacket while the radio hummed quietly in the background. His thoughts remained somewhere else entirely. Back in 1979, back before the case destroyed careers, back before officers stopped trusting each other, back before children vanished into the system while adults argued over paperwork and blame. 5 donuts later, the prison finally appeared ahead. Tall fencing, steel gates, concrete walls. The place looked less like a correctional facility and more like something designed to erase people from the world entirely. Reeves parked slowly near the entrance and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. He hated prisons. Not because of criminals, because prisons held unfinished conversations. Regret, truth, and men with nothing left to lose. The captain stepped out holding his wallet while finishing the last bite of another donut. A correctional officer standing near the gate studied him briefly before recognition crossed his face. Well, I'll be damned, the guard muttered. Captain Reeves. Reeves nodded once. The steel gate buzzed loudly before slowly sliding open. The sound echoed through the morning air like something mechanical waking up. Inside, the world turned gray. Gray walls, gray floors, gray uniforms. Even the fluorescent lighting felt cold enough to drain color from skin. Reeves walked through security checkpoints while keys rattled endlessly around him. Younger officers glanced toward him curiously without recognizing who he was. Older guards recognized him immediately but said very little. Word traveled quietly inside places like this, especially when retired captains suddenly returned after years away. The deeper Reeves walked into the facility, the heavier his breathing became. Eventually, he entered a large visitation yard filled with cement tables permanently sealed into the ground. Everything felt hard, cold, permanent. Reeves sat down slowly, then waited. At first, all he heard was distant movement inside the prison, metal doors slamming, voices echoing, a guard coughing somewhere behind him. Then finally, he heard the wheelchair. The slow squeak of the wheels echoed softly across the concrete before the man himself ever appeared. Reeves lowered his eyes briefly, almost bracing himself, because suddenly he realized something uncomfortable. Part of him still feared this man. Not physically, psychologically. The wheelchair finally rolled into view, and there he was, older now, much older. Age in prison had weakened his body badly, but his eyes looked exactly the same, sharp, watchful, unsettling. The kind of eyes that always looked like they knew more than they were saying. The wheelchair stopped beside the table. Silence settled between both men first. Heavy silence. History-filled silence. Finally, the man spoke. "I didn't expect to ever see you again." Reeves leaned back slowly. "Trust me," he said quietly. "This wasn't on my list either."